Kabir Bedi to Trivandrum.
Thank you
Such
so
an
much,
honor and
Saraswati.
pleasure to meet one of the legends of Indian cinema. Someone we have seen grown up on billboards in cinema, in serials, and so on. Always known for his deep baritone voice and that handsome, hunk that he has been on screen. So here is somebody in real flesh and blood willing to talk to us about his journey in cinema and ups and downs in his life in this very, very honest autobiography that he's written, Stories I Must Tell. It's a compelling read, and I've sat up reading it to find out more about this man that I only knew through columns and through his work, rather. So let's talk to Kabir Bedi to find out more about the person behind the actor. Welcome, sir.
Thanks, Saraswati. Let me just say before we begin, I want to thank each one of you for giving up your Sunday morning sleep to come to the first session of this Mathrubhumi festival. I really appreciate the trouble you have taken to be here and to listen to me, because I feel I have a lot to say and I'd like to share it with people that care, and thank you for caring and being here.
Kabir, let me start off, if I may call you Kabir, please. So let me begin with the Stories I Must Tell, because it tells us about the Kabir Bedi that we haven't seen on screen. It talks about a little boy grew up in Delhi with really a hunger, an ambition for doing well in life, and trying it in Doordarshan and All India Radio and getting the first interview with the Beatles when they landed in India. Can you tell us a little bit about meeting with the Beatles? Because that's something really iconic, and you go about it in great detail in the first chapter of your book.
You know, I graduated from St. Stephen's College in Delhi, and the reason I was working for All India Radio was for various family reasons, which you will discover in the book. There were freedom fighters, etc. They didn't have enough money, so I had to work my way through college, which is why I worked for radio. And I was the biggest Beatles fan in the world. And I heard that they'd come into town. They made an unscheduled stopover on the way back from Manila to London, because in Manila, they'd had a problem with the government. At that time, President Ferdinand Marcos used to rule Philippines. And Imelda Marcos, famous for her 3,000 shoes, asked them to come, the Beatles to come and sing at her children's birthday party. And she refused, and they refused. So the wrath of the Marcoses descended on them. They were asked to leave the country, they were manhandled at the airport, and they left Manila and made this unscheduled stop in Delhi. So when I went to my bosses in All India Radio and I said, you know, I want to interview the Beatles, कैसे मिलेगा इंटरव्यू, पूरी दिल्ली प्रेस पड़ी है उनके पीछे. And I said, no, sir, give me a chance, give me a tape recorder, give me a badge, I will do my best. So they gave me this badge. And you know, they were staying at the Oberoi Intercontinental in Delhi, which was at that time the first modern 5-star hotel in Delhi. And the lobby was filled with journalists. The crowds were kept out, but the lobby was full of journalists. And all of them were looking for the Beatles. I, being a Beatles fan, knew that I had to find the manager somehow. So, his name was Brian Epstein. So I kept looking out for him, and a couple of hours later, he descended from the lift and came out. And none of the press recognized him. So I accosted him as he was going on his way to catch his car. And I said, sir, I'm Kabir Bedi from All India Radio. The government have scheduled an interview with the Beatles tonight at 10 o'clock. So he exploded. He said, what nonsense! The boys will not give any interview to anybody. I said, sir, but the government have scheduled the interview. I'm from All India Radio, it's a government station, and they'll get into trouble with the government. You know why I'm emphasizing trouble with the government, because they just got into trouble with the Philippines government. So he said, no, not possible. I said, sir, please, sir, the government will cause problems, and I'm a Beatles fan. I don't want this to happen to them. He said, well then, I will give the bloody interview. The boys will not give any interview. I said, sir, good enough for me. Brian Epstein, it's good enough for me. I'm happy to do an interview. It was enough for me. So he gave me a time. I went up to his room at 7 o'clock in the evening, and when he opened the door, he was looking, I don't know whether he was ill or whether he was on drugs or whether he was in this night hospital gown, bath towel gown. He was sweating. He was looking pale. And I knocked on the door many times. Finally, he opened it. I said, Kabir Bedi, sir, from All India Radio. And he said, oh, God, I can't do this. So I thought, Mare guy. So he said, hold on. He went inside, put some trousers on, came, caught my arm, walked me across the room, all the way across the floor to the suite at the other end of the floor where the Beatles, which the Beatles had. He knocked on the door. Paul McCartney opened the door and he said, boys, do me a favor, give this chap an interview. And I was in the room with the Beatles, all four of them. You know, it was like, you know, walking on clouds. I mean, these are my heroes, musical heroes. But you know, to interview the Beatles, you have to understand, it wasn't just that they were great musicians. They represented the 1960s. Everything the 1960s stood for, the new types of music with the Rolling Stones and Simon and Garfunkel and Joan Baez and the Jefferson Airplane, and the incredible sounds that were being created. A revolution was happening at social levels. The pill had been invented. There was a new freedom of sexuality. Hippies were descending everywhere, talking about turn on, tune in, and drop out. You know, there was so much happening that the Beatles represented the era and the excitement of change, of social, political change of the 1960s, where people were demonstrating for peace on the roads for the first time in history against the Vietnam War. And to be in the same room as not just musical icons, but the icons of the age was breathtaking. Now, what I said to them in the interview, etc., I can't go into right now because that'll be the whole session. But it's in my book, you can read that. And what happened as a result of the aftermath of the interview, which is very not what you may think it was, is also in my book. But that did take me eventually from Delhi to Bombay to find my fortune in a different field and sphere altogether.
Yes, that was the very interesting part where he met the Beatles and cheekily asked John Lennon whether he took drugs. I thought that was a very brave question, considering
that was one of my questions. The answer lies in my book.
So, and from there you went to Bombay and then you worked as an advertisement executive in some of the best places. And that's where you eventually met Alec Padamsee, the theatre guru and one of the stalwarts of theatre. And there's a very interesting description how he made his grand appearance in Tughlaq. You must read it, where he shows his bare body and with his butt. He was wearing a kind of a loincloth, which was not obvious. So maybe it'll best that Kabir tells you about how he made his grand debut as Tughlaq, the one that we learned, Muhammad bin Tughlaq, who introduced currency and who moved his capital from Delhi to Daulatabad and so on. So
Right.
would you mind a little glimpse into that?
Absolutely, absolutely. See, when I came to Bombay, I started working in advertising because I really wanted to become a filmmaker at that time. And I thought there were no film schools. So the best way to learn about film was to make films. And the best way to learn about films was to make ad films. So I became an ad filmmaker at Lintas, which is one of the big multinational advertising agencies, and then later also with Benz at an agency now called Ogilvy and Mather. And it was my great good fortune that my boss, the creative controller of the group, was Alec Padamsee, whose real passion was theatre. And I'd done plays all my life as a hobby at my school, at St. Stephen's, and with Joy Michael, Yatrik in Delhi and all that. So he was thrilled that an actor had joined the agency. And he tried me out in one play, Marat Saad's play called Marat Saad. And then after that, he liked my work in that so much that he gave me the lead in Tughlaq, which is Girish Karnad's first major play in English. And Alec was a very inventive genius. He kept trying things till he got it right. And he thought of an opening scene where I would be standing, imagine me on the stage here, with my back to the audience, arms spread out like this, top light, looking completely naked, right? And then the courtiers come on, they dress the king. After he's dressed, he turns around and he begins with the opening oration of the play. But this image of a naked man standing on stage with his back to the audience was so breathtakingly shocking for the audience that the minute the curtains opened and this image came on, everyone and that created shockwaves across Bombay. It went on to become the biggest theatrical hit in Bombay. Not just because of my butt, I must confess, because Girish Karnad did write a brilliant play, and Alec Padamsee did do a brilliant piece of directing, and we had some of Bombay's finest actors
Yeah, but
in
it
the
helped,
play.
I think. But it did help, right?
But
That
the
kind of
opening
intro.
image got people, made me known instantly across all sectors of Bombay. And that's what got Bollywood calling. And when Bollywood started calling, I thought, well, I want to be a filmmaker. Bollywood में दाखिल तो हो जाओ, बाद में देखते हैं क्या होता है. And I entered Bollywood, and then various things followed. But that's the story of the opening shot of Tughlaq.
It's captivating to read the way you've written it with so much of honesty and candor. And there's a lot of hidden humor in the book. So one never knew, one always thought Kabir Bedi was a sex symbol. He is this handsome man with a lovely voice and all that. But one never knew that Rajiv Gandhi and Sanjay Gandhi were his childhood buddies, chuddy buddies in fact. And that after Rajiv Gandhi became the PM, there's a very poignant chapter that I thought where you go to meet him. And he says, you know, can you recount that? I thought that was very moving, that chapter about meeting Rajiv
Yeah.
Gandhi.
I knew Rajiv and Sanjay Gandhi from the first school that I went to. Rajiv was a year older than me, Sanjay was a year younger than me. And we got to know each other very well because I was one of their pals. They'd call me to the house, we'd play with their electric trains that they had. They had one full room which had this long electric trains on tracks with signals that went up and down and lights that turned red and green, presented by some foreign heads of state to Nehru's grandchildren. And Indira Gandhi at that time used to be sort of
Auntie Indu to you.
Auntie Hindu to me, used to be one of the hostesses of, was the official hostess of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. She played the role of First Lady. So she was always there, and we would swim in the pools and learn horse riding at Rashtrapati Bhavan, etc. So we were quite close as friends growing up. Then I went off to America, etc. That's the whole Hollywood part of my career and the European part of my career. And after Rajiv became Prime Minister, I went to see him. And so I was sitting in the room with all these ministers waiting to see him, and I was sitting out there. And he opened the door of his office, he saw me, he said, "Come Kabir," past all the ministers, senior ministers and all. I thought, great, yeah, he's been a real friend. I went inside, and he closed the door behind him, and he gestures to the expanse of the Prime Minister's office, and he said, "Kahan phas gaye, yaar? Where have I got stuck, buddy?" You know. I said, "Rajiv, you're Prime Minister now, you better get serious about this." He said, "Don't you tell me to be serious. Everybody else is telling me to be serious. You are my friend. Let's chat about good." So let me chat about good things, etc. Old times and what I thought of he could do, etc. Nothing serious, but just kept it light. And when I was leaving, I gave him a hug, and I felt his body tense, and I realized why. Because he was wearing a bulletproof vest, and he didn't want anybody to know. And I said to him, I said, "I know you've been through a lot. I know why you have to do what you're doing. Take care of yourself." He said, "Don't worry, Kabir, I'll be fine." But the tragedy was that he wasn't fine. Eventually, he also was assassinated, and he passed on. So I was very close to the Gandhi family at that time. Today, I'm not on the same political page as them, but I certainly have the fondest memories of Rajiv and Sanjay and the kindness of Indira Gandhi towards my family and the education of my sister, which she helped with.
Thank you, Kabir, for that lovely reminiscence of both of them who are no longer with us. And moving on, you came to Bombay. You kind of model for a very well-known cigarette company. Do you feel guilty about that? Because now we know cigarette is a cancer stick and so on. Do you find guilty about that because you made it so sexy to smoke?
You know, it's I don't advocate smoking because obviously it's not good for health, but I am a smoker. And I have no guilt about doing ads for smoking because I believe these are personal choices that people make. Whether people drink or whether they have pan or whether they have gutka or whether they have anything they want. It's a matter of their personal pleasure. It's not a matter for the state to intervene. This is a personal choice. I do not advocate it, but I believe that people should be given the right to choose. Therefore, I have no regrets for advertising cigarettes.
And you also did a lot of films in which the models were your first by Pratima Bedi, Shobha De, who was here yesterday, and some of the top shot models of the time. Would you like to reminisce a little bit about those days, those heady days when bohemianism was the other name for Bollywood in Bombay? At least for people like us living so far away from that glamorous world.
Yeah, you know, Pratima and I, Pratima being my wife, Pratima Bedi, who founded Nityagram, we were the original bohemians of Bombay. We were the ones that sort of were doing things that people didn't talk about but did, but we talked about it. And we were quite happy to push the envelope and scandalize people because that was sort of part of the rebellion of youth. And that's what people do when they're young. So that part of my life, the whole chapter in which I've devoted to my extraordinarily tumultuous relationship with Pratima and how a normal marriage ends up becoming an open marriage and the consequences of that, of living with that, and what follows from that. So I have discussed those issues also very deeply, very intimately, very frankly, and the dilemmas that those things caused for me. I won't go into that now, we just don't have the time to do it, but there's an interesting story in there of how Pratima set her eyes on me and was determined that I would be the man in her life. And I was determined that no model would ever be a woman in my life because I was the head of films at that time in Ogilvy and Mather, and I wanted to be considered seriously as a filmmaker. And I didn't want to be seen as dating models because then that means I could take advantage of them. So I didn't want her and she wanted me. And Pratima was very inventive, very determined. When she wanted something, she got it. But there's this time when we were shooting a commercial for Liberty Shirts on Juhu Beach around a fire where 7, 8 of Bombay's top models were dancing, and this bonfire and the camera going around and the music of the Doors, Baby You Can Light My Fire, playing in the background. And Pratima and Shobha De, then known as Shobha Rajadaksha, was one of those models. And I'd taken her for the film. And Pratima bet Shobha De, I will get Kabir no matter what. And Shobha said, let's see you do it. And she did. So Pratima won that bet.
Yes, and from then on, you've been again a very, very candid account of what happened in your marriage. But tell us something. I think the compare left out to say that you were the famous Sandokan. That's what really put you on the map, and the whole world was going gaga over this very good-looking prince turned pirate and especially in Italy. Could you talk to us about that phase in your life when you went international? One of the first to go, I think, like that, after perhaps Sabu, who played the elephant boy in Rudyard Kipling's story.
Yes. You know, after my first few hits in Bollywood, the Italians came calling to Bombay. And I was looking for something beyond Bollywood because really, you know, I didn't see myself succeeding as a leading man in Bollywood films because I didn't like singing and dancing. And although I love watching singing and dancing, I don't like doing it. So I knew I had to move beyond if I wanted a serious career as an actor. And when the Italians came to India looking for this Asian prince that fights the British, etc., I really did everything in my power to get that role, auditioned for it in Rome. I went to Rome at my own cost, auditioned for it, and I got the role. And that series went on to become the biggest hit in European television history. Those records and numbers have still not been matched today. People in the television business will know what I'm talking about when I say it had a 32% share. Today, if a program has a 6% share, it's considered a hit. So that kind of success, and wasn't just Italy. At that time, it was across the whole of Europe, Spain, France, Germany, East Europe, Holland, the whole of Europe. And of course, across the whole of South America, many countries in Africa. And it made me, I saw Beatlemania out there. What the Beatles were getting, that streets crowded with screaming fans, etc., etc. And it was really an extraordinary achievement for an Indian actor to go and become such a big star in Italy overnight. And that changed my life forever. There are many stories connected with that visit and things that happened which are absolutely gems and fascinating. Too many to recount right now. But beyond anything else, it also gave me the opportunity of pushing the envelope and saying, now let's go to Hollywood and see what happens. And that's what took me on to Hollywood as well, and all the adventures that followed in Hollywood.
You were one of the first to kind of break the barriers and go on looking for larger roles for Indians in Bollywood and so on. Looking now at the scenario when we have 3 Oscar nominations and so many Indian films making a splash abroad, what do you think about that? How do you feel about it since you were one of the pioneers? Looking back, what would you like to talk about it?
I'm very glad that Priyanka Chopra, who launched my book, by the way, said that Kabir paved the way for us. Because when I was there, the biggest problem was that Hollywood was not writing roles for Asians or Indians. And if they're not writing roles for Asians or Indians, how can Asians or Indians get a foot in Hollywood? I adjusted because the way I look, I could play many non-Indian roles as well. I just became sort of resident foreigner in Hollywood, who played Arabs, who played South Americans, who played Germans, who played Russians. Anything foreign, I was game for. I had to adjust. But they weren't writing enough roles for Indians and Asians. And I protested this in the papers, in the columns, and I don't know whether due to me or whether many other people did the same, but certainly in time, they started writing more roles for Indians, and Indians broke through. Most notably, I think, leading the parade right now is Priyanka Chopra, with her extraordinary success internationally. And I adore Priyanka, and I was in her first Hindi film called The Hero, where she had some wonderful scenes with me. And she's been a wonderful friend and supporter ever since, and I will remain her friend and supporter in all her Hollywood journeys, saluting everything she has achieved.
And Kabir, and you've also been very honest about you're a much married man, within quotes. What are your views on marriage exactly? Because when during a marriage at Pratima Bedi, you were right about how hurt you were that, that she was openly having an affair with another person, and that wasn't your idea of marriage. Tell us, what is your idea of marriage now after being through, now what is your view on marriage?
Well, my ideal marriage is sitting right here.
Yeah.
My
True.
wife, Parveen. So I want to
Round
say,
of applause to her.
it took me a while to get there, but I got there. A few trial and errors along the way. No, but the thing is, there are reasons one gets attracted to people. There's reasons one chooses to marry people. And nobody ever, at least not to my mind, gets married with the intention of getting divorced. You want it to be a success. You want it to work. But in time, with the case of Protima for some reasons, in the case of my American wife, Michelle, for other reasons, Nikki, my English wife, for other reasons, and all different reasons. Circumstances change, people change, and not every. There's a saying in Urdu that, you know, if a story cannot be taken to its conclusion, it is better to leave it at a beautiful bend in the road. You know? So, जिस अफसाने को अंजाम तक नहीं पहुंचा सकते, उसे एक खूबसूरत मोड़ पर छोड़ देना बेहतर. You know? Sorry. जिस अफसाने को अंजाम तक पहुंचाना मुमकिन ना हो, उसे एक खूबसूरत मोड़ पर छोड़ देना बेहतर. That is the correct quotation. So, in my situation, you know, in the case of Nikki, for instance, we were in India, then she had this program on Sky Television, then it got very controversial and they stopped the thing, and she joined me in America when I was working in The Bold and Beautiful, and we had a wonderful time. And then I went through a period of following the success of all that, I went through a period of enormous financial setbacks, emotional setbacks, the death of my son. I'd come almost to rock bottom. And we came back to England and started rebuilding our lives. And I thought I wanted to go back to India. And Nikki wanted to remain in England. So, you know, for a few years we tried this long distance relation. It didn't work. At the end of it, if somebody wants to be in one country and somebody wants to be in the other country, the only beneficiaries are the airline companies and the telephone companies. So it's better to call it a day with mutual respect and go on. And one thing I do take pride in, I regard as one of my accomplishments, is that I remained friends with all my ex-wives, even after we divorced. And this is because there was mutual respect, fulfillment of obligations, and although there is always pain at the time of separation, you cannot escape that. But at the end of that pain, if you can still remain friends, I think it's a great achievement. And I did that. So marriage is something you can't quantify. Every marriage is different. Only a man and a woman in a marriage know what happens in that marriage. Nobody else knows what happens in that marriage. And so each to their own journey. Hopefully you find a great companion in life. Hopefully you realize that nobody is perfect. You have to accept each other's imperfections. And if that becomes intolerable, you have to go your own ways. If that is tolerable, you will still find beautiful things to do together. And I wish everyone a long and happy marriage.
Thank you. Moving on to difficult marriages, you played a villainous husband in Khoon Bhari Maang with
Khoon Bhari
Rekha.
Maang.
Yeah, you tried to feed her to the crocodiles. So what was it like working with Rekha after a break? You'd worked with her long before and then it came in, worked again. And Khoon Bhari Maang remains one of your biggest hits in Bollywood.
It does. You know, I was shooting with Tom Selleck for Magnum PI in Hawaii. And I was sitting in my Honolulu hotel room and looking out across the bay, and the sun was setting and there was a golden kind of glow. I thought, what a lovely evening. And the phone rings, landlines those days. So I picked up the phone. It was Rakesh Roshan from India. And I said, Rakesh, why are you calling? What's up, Han? Lovely to speak to you. What's up? He said, Kabir, I want you to play the lead role in my film. I said, that's fantastic, but why are you calling me in Honolulu to shoot a film in Bollywood? Bollywood mein sab heroes strike kar rahe hain kya? Are they all on strike? He said, no, Kabir, thing is, in my film, the hero becomes a villain. So no hero wants to do it. And if I put a villain from the beginning,
Yes, you were
there's
wooing
no surprise. You're the only one who can play a hero and villain convincingly, therefore, only you. So I was still not a little in doubt going all the way back to do a film. I said, but who's the heroine? He said, Rekha. I said, done. Rekha at that time was at the peak of her powers. She'd won the National Award for Umarao Jan. She was doing the best films in Bollywood. She looked like $1,000,000. And, um, and I had the greatest respect for her. She used to be my neighbor when I stayed in Beach House in Bombay. And when she first came, and everyone said, "Oh, kaisi hai, kali hai, South Indian hai, kaise chalegi yahan?" She proved them all wrong. She worked, she changed her shape, she did roles that blew their socks off, and became from an ugly duckling into a beautiful swan, and made a mark in the heights of Bollywood. So when he said Rekha, I said done. And of course I came back, we shot the film, and it became my biggest Bollywood hit.
Considering your vast experience in filmmaking as an ad maker, which means you have to sell your film really well, how is it that you didn't want to direct a film or even, direct a play, or because you have considerable experience in both the arts? Why is that?
Good question, Saraswati. The thing is, to direct or produce a film needs a certain commitment of time. Each film is about a 3-year commitment, at least, between thinking of it, developing it, perfecting it, casting it, shooting it, and then recovery of the monies from it, etc. My life as an actor was so itinerant. One moment I'm in Hollywood, next moment I'm in Italy, next moment I'm in India. That continuity I needed to run, to keep projects on a go, focused to get them done, just never happened. I was too distracted by all that was happening in my world as an actor. And remember, this was the time when there were no emails, there was no social media, there was, your telex or fax was the fastest means of communication. From India in the early days, if you needed to call abroad, you had to book a telephone call to do an international call. And when you did that, every 3 minutes the operator would come in and say, "You want to continue, sir?" I said, "Yes, I want to continue." And your conversation would continue. So those are the days. It's not easy to be everywhere at once. I did manage a minor miracle in the sense that I kept myself current as an actor on 3 continents while not being able to be on all 3 simultaneously. In India, I'd come, I'd do the big film festivals, I'd do the big stadium events. People would see me in comparing these big events or giving great voiceovers to documentaries or commercials. I was always there, but not there. America knew me because I did so many of the different television series that they did. The most notable, of course, being The Bold and Beautiful, which I did for 1 year. And Italy never stopped knowing me because I would always come back and do many major series for the Italians ever since the time of Sandokan. I've done 6 major television series for the Italians. I have a lifelong relationship with them. They have decorated me with the highest civilian honor, Cavaliere. And I can say that Italy has given me more honor than any other country in the world. And I would say that 50% of my work is in Italy, 25% possibly in Bollywood and in Indian films, and 25% in America, but 50% of my work has been in Italy. And it's acting that kept me focused and keeping myself alive as an actor. So I never managed to focus that energy of that concentrated time and place needed for directing or producing.
Is that on your mind now? Would you like to do it, try it?
I'm not looking for it. If somebody were to bring me a project that I think, wow, I would really love to produce this or direct this, I will look at it. But right now I have so many interesting projects happening as an actor. I mean, I've just done two great Telugu films. I've done 2 wonderful Kannada films. I mean, this last year alone, one Punjabi film, one Hindi film, one thing for OTT. So my calendar is pretty full as an actor, apart from being asked to be a motivational speaker at various corporate events or doing documentary commentaries, presenting things. So I'm not looking to produce or direct. But if a project comes to me, I'll certainly look at it because I'm always looking to push the envelope. And as you'll see from my book, the theme of my life has been how people can push the envelope. How can you take things one step beyond? What is it that takes you to the next level? And how you can reinvent yourself even after your success. And above all, how do you rise from the worst of adversities and setbacks in life? How do you reinvent yourself from that? That too is part of the themes of my book.
Absolutely. You have talked again with great pain about the loss of your son and how you kind of really found it difficult to recover from that. And each word, it's kind of brings out that anguish that you felt when you lost him. But moving apart, you managed to kind of really put your life together again and move on. But so coming to a happier part of the phase in your life, what was it like to play Govinda in Octopussy? Because James Bond is such an iconic figure, and here you were shooting in India, in Jaipur, and in a villain in an auto rickshaw chasing Roger Moore all over town. Can you share a little bit about that?
That was like the Beatles moment all over again. Because, I was the first Indian actor that acted in a Bond film. And then the Bond film happened to come to India. And we are shooting in the Lake Palace in Udaipur. And where we were staying was the Shiv Nivas, which is in the palace overlooking the Lake Palace. And around me there's Roger Moore lounging around the pool. There's the Broccoli family that invented the whole genre of the Bond films, sitting having lunch by the pool. The great director John Glenn is sitting there. And I'm thinking, I died and went to heaven. This is
Surrealistic,
an Indian
right?
actor in Udaipur with these people surrounding him in a Bond film. It was like that you have a few wow moments in your life when something really special happens to you and you think, wow, this is happening to me? That was one of them. And also what happens is the Bond film, the Sandokan series made me a star in Europe. The Bond films have a built-in franchise of fans around the world. And when you do any role of any importance in a Bond film, all those fans, millions, hundreds and millions, want to know something about you, want to know more about you. Send you letters, send you invitations, send you photographs to be signed, send you events to attend. You just become part of a massive ecosystem of the Bond films. And that's also what happened to me with the Bold and Beautiful. Because Bold and Beautiful also was watched by 1 billion people every night in 143 countries. So you then join another ecosystem of fans, which is the Bold and Beautiful ecosystem. And they have their own worlds within worlds. And you're drawn into that. So the Bond film certainly was a great moment of achievement for me as an Indian actor. It gave me a global audience, which was certainly very heartwarming after getting the European audience. And so those were sort of one of the defining moments. And of course, they take enormous pains to shoot their film, and that's why they're so good. The climax scene has me and Louis Jordan taking off in a plane, Roger Moore jumping onto the plane, on top of the plane, small plane. And that shot was shot in Udaipur. The fight between Roger and Moore was shot in Pinewood Studios in London. The scenery behind us, which is the plane over countryside, was shot in Germany. And me falling off the plane at the end was shot with a skydiver in America. So three continents to shoot one scene. That's what the Bond film does. They will do whatever it takes to get the best effect for every single scene. And that's why the Bond films are the longest running franchise in film history.
Kabir, thank you so much.